This is critical information you need to know and understand. The term reserve currency refers to a currency that is held by governments and institutions as part of their foreign exchange reserves. It is used as a means of international trade and a store of value. In the case of the United States, the dollar has long held the position of the world's primary reserve currency. The origins of the dollar as the world's reserve currency can be traced back to the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944, where major Allied powers agreed to peg their currencies to the US dollar, which was in turn pegged to gold. This established the US dollar as the primary currency for international trade and finance. But, as you know, the dollar is no longer pegged to gold. In 1971, President Nixon removed the convertibility of the dollar to gold and let the dollar float as a fiat currency, with its value based on the trust in the United States government. The significance of the US dollar being the world's reserve currency lies in its stability, liquidity, and wide acceptance. Countries hold US dollars as reserves to facilitate trade, finance their deficits, and protect against currency fluctuations. This status gives the U.S. significant influence over global financial markets and allows it to borrow in its own currency at lower interest rates. Looking ahead, there are potential developments in the global financial system that could impact the reserve currency status of the U.S. dollar. The rise of other global currencies, such as the Chinese yuan, and the increasing use of digital currencies could challenge the dominance of the dollar.
But if the US dollar loses its status as a reserve currency, what would happen? Starting with international trade, I think the US dollar's dominance has made it easier for countries to engage in global commerce. But if it stops being a reserve currency, maybe that ease of use would change. Perhaps other currencies could become more prominent or even take over certain roles. For example, China's yuan might gain traction as an alternative to the dollar, especially since China is one of the world's largest economies.
Moving on to investment, the US dollar has been a popular choice for investors due to its stability and liquidity. If it loses its reserve currency status, maybe other currencies could become more attractive. For instance, European currencies like the euro or Japanese yen might offer better returns or be accepted in more international transactions. Additionally, emerging markets might see their currencies gain prominence if they can attract foreign investment.
In financial markets, the US dollar's dominance affects interest rates and exchange rates. If it loses its reserve currency status, central banks might need to adjust monetary policies to maintain economic stability. This could involve changing interest rates or adjusting the balance of payments. Furthermore, global financial systems rely heavily on a stable reserve currency, so any changes in this status could disrupt these systems.
Geopolitically, the US dollar's influence is significant because it's tied to geopolitical dynamics. If it loses its reserve currency status, there might be shifts in power dynamics within international organizations like the IMF or World Bank. This shift could lead to new alliances or conflicts as different countries seek to leverage their currencies for trade and finance.
There are clouds on the horizon for the dollar. London's Financial Times reports that Wall Street banks are starting to trim their U.S. positions, dumping U.S. assets in favor of Europe's surging markets. The Times indicates that this could be the start of a long-term move by big institutional money managers attempting to reduce their exposure to the U.S. dollar. And, last year foreign central banks unloaded $59 billion worth of U.S. securities. This leaves the dollar in an increasingly shaky position in the world economy.
Putting this all together, if the US dollar stops being the world's reserve currency, I imagine a lot of things would change. There might be competition from other major economies, especially in emerging markets. Central banks and governments would need to adjust their monetary policies to maintain economic stability without relying solely on the US dollar as a reserve currency. However, there is a way to shield yourself from the impacts of this de-dollarization. It would be wise to reduce your exposure to the dollar. Instead of holding only U.S. government fiat currency, buy gold and silver. Put yourself on the standard of value that the U.S. abandoned in 1971 when President Nixon shocked the world by taking the dollar off the gold standard. As the dollar continues to sink in value due to the government's reckless fiscal policies, your gold and silver holdings will protect you from the inevitable inflation to come. And you will be glad you took action when you did.
Thank you for taking the time to watch our video. We truly appreciate your support and interest in our content. We hope you learned something valuable from this video. If so, please click the thumbs up, like button to let us know. Now, we recommend you watch this video next. It will further boost your knowledge and skills in this important area.